But first, our next guest of the hour. His name is Robert Bain. He's with Metaphora, and our notes say he's the strongest man in freight.
It's not wrong.
Robert, how are you doing this morning?
I'm fantastic. How are you guys doing?
We are well.
Good. Awesome.
So
hopefully the weather down there is as good as it is here in Chicago.
Oh yeah? How's it out there?
Perfect. 70 degrees and sunny.
It's a bit muggy out here, I will say that. I'm getting over all the hot muggy weather, so I digress.
Fair.
But we are going to be talking about training employees and maybe moving a bit beyond that. So let's get into this topic. How important would you say it is to properly train your employees?
This is one of the most important things that we talk about after you bring on employees. Certainly, it's a challenging environment to bring on new employees right now. Finding the right candidates, bringing them in, keeping them in is incredibly important. And one of the ways to do that is to invest time and effort and energy into their training. What we typically see with a lot of companies is they stop at new hire training, get somebody in, get them on the floor. And that's important, certainly, because there is a burden on management. There's a burden on that individual to get them essentially profitable once they come into the organization. But then a lot of organizations don't take the time to continue to train people. And so you'll find some folks that just find their way and they figure out how to be great individual producers, but they then don't necessarily understand how to lead or how to understand different parts of the industry or the business itself. And so when it comes time to that next stage of their career, they're just simply not prepared. And so being thoughtful about that is one of the things that we talk about with a lot of our clients is preparing every individual for that next step in the journey, whether that is to continue on as an individual contributor or to become a leader and to kind of start moving up through the ranks within the organization.
Robert, I think this is a great point and an excellent topic to talk about because it's almost like, of course, being a power lifter, kind of not feeling some gaps or just kind of knowledge gaps and training gaps. I'm sure there's like some points within a sticking point in a bench press where you're the bottom half of it. You got to really kind of fill some of those miscues and those training points that you have to be able to kind of strengthen in order to really kind of get a full utilization out of it. And I can only imagine some of the gaps in knowledge, some unknown unknowns when you're looking at training when it comes into continuous development. When you're looking at the freight industry specifically, what do some of those continuous improvements look like?
So there's a lot of different things we could look at. And I love the analogy you make around, sticking points in a bench press or in any other lifts. What got you to those PRs that you've hit previously and what got you to the revenue levels you're at won't necessarily get you to the next levels, if that makes sense. And so you have to start looking at, additional role specific type of training or even promotion specific. What's it going to take to go from a carrier sales rep to senior carrier sales rep to team lead, or from account coordinator to account manager to director of accounts, those types of things. It can also be mentorship opportunities, and mentorship is two ways. It's being mentored by leaders in the organization or that are a part of the industry. It's also being a mentor to others, because then you start to identify those who could also be your trainers and your training resources. Other areas that you can sort of look at are there's e-learning courses and certificates. There's having employees kind of sit and learn new tasks, whether it be somebody in the account management group sitting with carrier sales. Sometimes it's really good also to understand what the different roles do. One of the things that I always preach when I'm personally doing training and that we do with our clients is understanding the ecosystem that is your organization. How does each different role affect the others? And so kind of having that full 360 view allows folks to grow and understand. And then create insights too around how can what they do on a day-to-day basis make their teammates' lives easier.
I'm curious what you might recommend when it comes to how often you should maybe recap on your training. Of course, there's got to be individual, folks that need different training or at different points in their careers. And so maybe like a 6-month check-in every 6 months, or just focus it on an individual basis?
That's a great question. And certain people are going to have different opinions on this. And what we typically recommend is it starts with a training needs assessment or a skills assessment. What are people good at and what do they need help with? you certainly don't ever want to neglect the soft skills as well. How to not be a jerk is kind of how I say it. When you're writing an email or talking on the phone with someone. Also, we tell people take advantage of external resources. So whether it is a learning management system, but ultimately what you want to look at is you want to look at certainly the individual, but then kind of design for each role a learning journey. What's it look like from the day they walk in the door till either the day they become the CEO, if that ever is an option, or until the day they may potentially leave the organization, that they are leaving better than when they came in. And so thinking of your time in an organization as a learning journey, and as you're a leader and you're developing that, that's really how to kind of think about it, is what is the next step in the learning journey? And then where does an individual fall in? Are they ready for that next step? And if they're not, how do we get them there?
And Robert, bringing it back to lifting once again, one of my favorite things within benching was negatives, really overloading the weight and making sure that my body, my central nervous system got adjusted to that weight, but also having that spotter there to help me out. When I think about this in a business aspect, I almost think of like that as being a mentor, being able to help you out whenever you're overloaded and really being able to really kind of guide you through these processes. How important is a mentorship throughout the ongoing continuous training process?
Great question. And I guess we personally, and then just overall, personally, there is nothing better than having a mentor. I could mention many, many people who have mentored me and helped my career along. My teammate Ryan Schreiber is one of them. Another great one is Chris Glotzbach, who a lot of folks around the industry know. And these individuals have helped my career tremendously. But it's incredibly important to find those individuals, whether they are part of your organization or not. But the great organizations develop those programs so that someone doesn't have to go seek those out. And so to your point, it's kind of like having a spotter. It's like having a coach. It's really like having a career GPS to make sure that you're not going to take those wrong turns, or if you're going to go down a path that is not necessarily the beaten one, you can kind of go in eyes wide open.
And what would you say might be the most frustrating or difficult parts of training that maybe some companies aren't necessarily grasping? We talk with recruiters, we talk with other companies when they're trying to, hire on more people. And some reasons people quit or leave the industry in general is because they were not trained properly. So what might companies be dealing with, and why might they not be doing this training?
Certainly. And this is an important one. And I think that folks need to really kind of dial into this as they look across their own organization. There's, first of all, the burden on management. Ultimately, who is typically doing your training? It is somebody who is either a leader or a high performer. And there's a burden on them to do that training. They're either away from their day-to-day responsibilities, or they're pulling away from the things that typically are most productive. So there is that one aspect. And also there is the burden of creating the materials. Do you create a slideshow? Do you create tests? Are you just doing shadowing? If you're doing shadowing, how do you make it so that when I shadow somebody in December during peak season, they're going to get the same experience and the same knowledge as somebody who is shadowing, say, in July, where it's not peak season and there's less going on and there's less freight moving. And so being able to create that, and really when we talk to our clients about this is not something that they have to figure out. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can leverage external resources that have done this over and over and over again. You don't have to do this on your own. And that's really where a lot of organizations can take some time and some pause to say, do we need to do this? Do we have the resources to do so? Or does it make sense to either look at external resources or to develop an internal SME team that can, subject matter expert team that can help develop this for us? Because again, ultimately that burden on management and the loss of production is what a lot of organizations, kind of get hung up on.
And Robert, how do you kind of really identify or pinpoint what kind of training someone might need? When I think about, again, with athletics, not everyone's looking to stand on top of a podium. Not everyone's looking to compete in a championship. Some people are just like, hey, I'm just doing this to kind of continuously improve my health. When I think about this in the business sense, someone's like saying, hey, I don't want to be a VP. I just kind of want to continue to constantly just kind of grow and maintain here. How do you identify who needs what type of training in those situations?
Great question. First things first, ask. Like what is it ultimately you want from this organization? Is it, I just want to learn a skill. I want to get involved in logistics. To your point, I just want to kind of enjoy my career here. There are some that already have those long-term aspirations. We still feel it's incredibly important, though, to have some of those leadership and some of those higher level trainings, even for those individuals that don't want to be in that leadership role. If nothing else, it creates that professional empathy. every one of us, those who are listening, the three of us, we've certainly all had those situations where a decision gets handed down from management and we don't quite understand how they came to that, because we also don't understand the purview that they have in their role. By giving some folks that bigger worldview of their organization, it helps to have that professional empathy, which is incredibly important. It helps continue to move the organization forward. But ultimately, the first thing first is simply to ask, what is it you ultimately want within this organization?
Amazing, Robert. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This has been incredibly
Thanks for having me.
insightful. And of course, strongest man in freight. Before I let you go, sumo or conventional deadlift?
Get you a guy who can do both.
I like it. I like it. Robert, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, guys.
Right now, we're going to take our next look at today's headlines.